He's a living Savior. Live and act as though he's dead. He's not dead.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the next Minisode of the Appalachian Disciples.
Yeah.
I'm Tommy, and I'm joined here with a guy who likes monster trucks and is afraid that they're under his bed. Cody, how are you doing?
Under my bed, a monster truck?
Yeah.
That's probably just my wife snoring.
Probably. Well played, well played.
You know, got to. Sorry, Carolyn. Love you.
And by the way, congratulations to the first lady of the Dindler household.
Yeah, the wife graduated college. Pretty cool step. That's what we've been doing. Been very time consuming, very busy.
I bet.
Yeah, pretty cool, man. She's going to be a sign language interpreter. We don't know how she's going to use it. That's what the degree's in, is in sign language.
We asked her to come on the show, but quite honestly, you won't be able to hear her.
Yeah, actually, she's actually doing it right now.
Yeah.
We're actually interviewing her today.
You're doing great, kid.
Oh, man. So, I think today we're talking about the how iron sharpens iron, right?
We are. And this is kind of going to go kind of sort of hand in hand with our next episode. That we already recorded. It's weird doing this out of order. But it's something that like I think is important for us as men and just Christians in general, is to spur one another along. Is that what it is? I think it's important because we need to be able to lift each other up and in many ways call each other out on our garbage.
Yeah, definitely.
Well. And sometimes that doesn't look pretty. If you have a friend who's, say, an alcoholic and he's at a bar and you get your band of brothers together, you go to that bar and you drag him out. If he wants to fight you, cool. You drag him out because you love him so much.
Yep.
If you don't call out a sin, you really don't love that person.
Absolutely. And I mean, the way that God even brings us along, not even just brother on brother or sister on sister type of discipleship, but how God brings us along. Sometimes that's not really pretty, and we have to be shaped and refined and strengthen each other the same way. I mean, that's what iron, people hear that iron sharpens iron. It makes a great t-shirt or a little wristband, but when you actually think about how iron is sharpening iron and what that means, there's a lot of rough stuff that happens in that process.
Right. So I'm going to start this off with just a Bible verse, Proverbs 11:14. Without wise leadership, a nation falls. There is safety in having many advisors. And I read that in, I was reading an actual devotion and yesterday, and that popped up. I'm like, I got to save that because that just strikes me because I'm like, man, I need many men advisors in my life because what if you're not available, Cody?
Yeah.
And what if only one person is? But what if all of them are? I mean, like, man, nothing is more powerful at church when I see a guy who's falling on his knees and there's just men around him just lifting him up and like just praying for him all. We need to have many advisors. And like when it says safety and having many advisors, those are the guys that are going to keep you on the right track.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too for even church leadership, how they have like a board of people who kind of keeps the pastor and stuff under that they have to answer to and stuff. I think that's a good thing to have lots of people. In our church we have our men's group, the Band of Brothers. Very important to have those guys that can call you out on your crap. You know. But I think with sharpening iron, it's really important to point out what that actually means, right? So that is a very difficult process. It is friction filled. It's not comfortable. It takes a lot of pushing and a lot of strength and a lot of grinding in order to get that sharpening. It's not just like what honestly would come to mind for me before we started thinking about this was like a knife sharpener,
right,
or something. But that's not sharpening iron. That is not what that is. That's a very Americanistic way almost of thinking about it. When you're taking a piece of iron and sharpening it against a piece of iron to make it sharp, it will, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah. And, like with that, there's many processes to that. Just think of iron in general. How do you create iron, right? It's got to be heated up,
yep.
And, molded. So, think of that as, the heat as maybe a bad situation. It's hot. Okay. And it could mold into anything at that moment. You could make it into
Ooh, that's good. You're about to spit some fire.
You can make it into a knife.
Yeah.
You can make it into a dull knife. You can make it into a flat, useless piece of whatever. Or you can start going to town on it and start nicking away all those impurities. Just like with gold. You melt away the gold. To the purification process of gold is by melting it down, get rid of those impurifications. So it's kind of the same way.
Yep.
And you got to select the sharpening tool, right?
Yep.
So for me, I'm like, okay, how am I going to approach this situation? How am I going to mentor this person? Am I going to come at them, like I mentioned earlier, if it's someone who's sitting there and they're abusive and they're an alcoholic or whatever, you might not come at them and be like, now listen, you're going to be a little bit more forceful, like, bro, you can't be doing that to your wife. Like, we love you, but you can't be. You got to be firm with them.
Yeah, but it's going to take the right person to do that.
Right.
If just some regular Joe comes up to the street and does that to me, I'm going to be like, bro, back off. But if I was doing something and I needed to be called out on it, I know it. I mean, we all know when we need to be sharpened, and in a lot of instances, it's not something that comes out of left field. I would trust you to come and do that.
Right.
But not everybody's going to be able to have that kind of interconnectedness.
And that's where true friendship or just fellowship isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary for sharpening character and wisdom. Like, you do become who you hang out with.
Absolutely.
And that's why I tell people all the time.
Or they become who they hang out with. So that thought real quick.
Oh, I like that, yeah.
How there's a choice there. You can become like them or they can become like you. There is no... Yes, you're going to get some characteristics. Like, for example, in our men's group that we, there's 4 of us that talk practically daily, all the time. Are we becoming more like each other we're all in like-mindedness and trying to be more Christ-like? Or are we slipping through the cracks and letting things through in our group chats that shouldn't? We're going to mess up from time to time, but I think it's important that when somebody comes to that realization, like, maybe we shouldn't have that conversation. Maybe we shouldn't laugh at that. Maybe we shouldn't have shared that funny TikTok that was hilarious. But at the same time, what are we doing? What are we allowing into that group chat? Because I love what you said, that when something is heated up like that, right? Because life, to me, in this scenario, life is the heat.
Right.
What are you going to mold into? What's that other piece of iron going to do? Are they going to shape you into a knife? Or are you going to be a paperweight?
Right.
That was fire.
You could be useless.
Yep.
And my goal is to literally have everyone around me be the sharpest tools ever. I mean, not calling you guys tools, you know what I'm saying? But, it's like, just, I want everyone around me to be able to be useful. And, but at the same time, like you mentioned, like, not just anybody could do it. There's accountability. You got to make sure, like I give you permission to call me out on my crap, really.
Yeah.
And a blade that is left alone will just become dull over time. So you need honest feedback or correction, or else it's just going to be stagnant.
But in loving ways.
Yeah.
Not to be like, Tommy, you're an idiot, bro. Like, how dare you go off on that customer? Like,
were you there today?
like, not just calling you out on your crap just to do it and to be a jerk about it, but coming at it in a loving way. Listen, man, that's not how we represent Christ. That's not what we're supposed to be called to look different. Let's not act like them. Let's walk away if we need to. Like, call them out in a loving way. It's not criticism and it's not judgment and tearing people down. It's relationship, and it's bringing someone along in a relationship where we can sharpen each other. And I fully expect you, whenever I have a bad day, to call me out, as same as I know you expect me to do you.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm doing something that's knuckleheaded, I want you to tell me, and I know you want me to tell you. Not everybody's going to do that. The relationship and the love part is very important with that.
Yeah, I think like another word for that, like in the terminology of, like, say, actual ironing, sharpening iron, would just be refining.
Yeah. Yep.
And just being respectful about it, because obviously when you're mad, the last person you want people to say is like, hey, calm down. We've all said that to our wives.
Dude, I cannot stand that. It makes me so, because you don't want to calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before, it involves friction, and like when you're sharpening iron, there's sparks. It's violent. It is not a pretty sight. It's loud.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to have those conversations, but I do know that like when you get to the point of getting, that's like the beginning, and then it slowly starts to like take shape, and then you could like work in the, the more like I was saying refining, but the more polished. You're getting the more details, and then it's calming down.
Yep.
So
I think too, what that practically looks like as far as of how can we apply this is maybe a friend that we've already kind of talked about. It doesn't necessarily have to be that either. It could be somebody who's not really involved in your life so much, but you look to them as a mentor. It could be a pastor or a youth pastor or whatever it may be, somebody that can lovingly confront you. And you give them that access. They might not be like your best friend that you're, going bowling and going to cookouts and stuff with, but it also could be your spouse. It could also be a sibling, just somebody maybe like that in your family that knows you well enough that can say, hey, you're off. That's not you. Don't act like that. Those types of things. Because we need those people that are able to do it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a friend. It can be lots of different things.
Right. And also there's a preparation for, when you're actually sharpening something like iron, but like in real world applications, what would the preparation be for iron sharpening iron? So for me, if I was to go to you and I'm like, okay, Cody's having this problem, how am I going to prepare for it? Like, okay, well, one, I'm going to pray about it. God, how do you want me to handle this? Because I might be like, I want to drag him outside, pin him to the ground, and be like, slap him, and be like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
But you might be saying, I think you should pray about it and come at him with a soft heart and just maybe go on a men's day, and then he'll open up to you. You don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
And iron, you sharpen each, like as I'm sharpening you, helping you, you're also helping me. That's why I say iron sharpens iron. And that's Proverbs 27:17, which is iron sharpens iron and one person sharpens another.
Right.
And that reciprocates. So like there'll be a time when that person who was down in the dumps is now sharpening you. It's amazing how it really works out.
Yeah. Two other some like real life ways that we can do this is that like a prayer partner, whoever that may be, I think that like daily conversations with this person who you're ever going to make this relationship with, whoever it might be, is really helpful. Like for you and I, we talk almost every single day. And I think that that's important because I'm not going to be able to tell if you're off like I can if I don't talk to you, right?
Right.
I'm just like, oh, he's just having a bad day. Not like I know a lot of things that are changing your mood and stuff, but it's really important that we have those people who are actually praying for us, people that are interceding to the Father for us and praying for Jesus to come and bless and things like that. It's very important that you have those people. That's one simple practical way that can you can put that into application.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to find good friends. And I have friends that aren't believers. I have friends that are definitely not believers. And so who am I going to keep close to me, that I allow them into the inner circle of my life. I have some friends that I'm like, I'm just cool with them. Like they're friendly. Then I have friends that like, I will literally tell you anything and everything. And that like you, and like you have full authority to come to my house and like literally drag me out and like put me in my place and tell me where I'm wrong. You have authority of calling me out on all my stuff. And
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I get home tonight. My phone's blowing up. But then there's
coming to get you.
But there's some people who I'm friendly with. I'm like, you don't have access to my life like that. You don't actually truly know me.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, if you could get there.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, it takes time, and it's especially it's like when you're sharpening iron, there's like a honing process where you're refining. I think that was the edges, and you're they do it with like a honing steel or like a fine stone.
Yeah,
and that's like kind of like in the real world application, it's like just gently fine tweaking other problems that might be the root cause.
Yeah,
like if there's an anger issue and he's lashing out at something, well, what's the cause? And then you may find out that he's struggling with something else, or he's not happy at his job or whatever. You're like, well, that's the problem.
Yeah. What's the root for it? For
You know,
sure.
because there's a root to everything.
Yeah.
And, and then, it just kind of, I always loved this. When I heard the iron and sharpening iron thing, was when I was a Christian, but I wasn't practicing fully. And then I started getting back into it. It was when I was being discipled by my father-in-law. And I heard that. I'm all, I really like that. Of course, you see it above gyms, high school gyms and stuff. But then when you really think about it, I'm like, man, what a great, just metaphor.
Yeah. But it's often overlooked of how good it is and what that actually means. Like you said, it's not a soft, cushy process to sharpen iron. It is really grinding. It's uncomfortable. It hurts. It's going to take a lot of work.
Right.
I think one of the big things about this is that you got to have the community. What that community looks like can be different. We already kind of talked about the prayer partners. Another big one would be like a good Bible group, a Bible study group, where you can openly ask questions. Because let's all be honest, none of us are. I guarantee you, nobody listening to this are biblical scholars. And even if they are,
speak for yourself.
I do apologize. I forgot I was in the presence of greatness, but but having those open conversations in a Bible study, I really don't know what this means. Why would they talk about boiling a goat in its mother's milk? Why is this even in here? And talking about the context of it and trying to figure it out. I have learned so much from those types of things. Just being open and honest about questions I have no idea why this is even here. Like the one about cooking bread over feces. What a weird scripture. I'm still searching for an answer on why that one's there.
I have bought some bread that tasted like it.
Well, Heiners. It is what it is. But, and then I think it's also important to have conversations that actually stir conviction and not just comfort, not things that feel good, because iron cannot sharpen iron unless there's discomfort. It shouldn't be a comfortable conversation about, oh, Jesus is just so great.
Which is why I think the prosperity gospel is so damaging.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, there is an essence of truth in some aspects of the prosperity gospel. God does want to bless you. Might not be with a private jet or with your debt being freed the second that you wake up, and you said a prayer. But, there are aspects that God does want to bless you, but the whole idea of iron and sharpening iron is based off of it's uncomfortable, it hurts, it's got to be heated up, there's refining. None of that is comfortable, It's not I took my chef's knife out of the block and just ran it a couple times on here and it was sharp. No, when it's talking about this, it is literally talking about a very grueling process.
Yeah. And there's also this, you a knife, you would polish it and it would be shiny and look good. Okay, cool. We got, John Smith, or is it John Smith, the Mormon guy?
Sure.
We got this person, he's back on track. We got him. Okay, cool. I think he's good to go. He's on the right track again. Now we got to test it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where you kind of was like, okay, I'm going to step back, or I'm going to slice this piece of paper, see, okay, is this working? And then, or if it's still dull, okay, well, we need to sharpen it some more.
Yeah.
And you do it again. And you do it until the person is, right with the Lord and not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing before and just being who they want to become. And that's the other thing, too. The person has to want to be sharpened.
Yeah. The person absolutely does. But I think there's some really big questions that we need to ask ourselves when it comes to this is, first off, who sharpens you and who are you sharpening? Because that's a very critical part of discipleship, right? We're trying to bring each other along. So who's sharpening you? Who's feeding into you? And who are you feeding into? We got to ask those questions if we're going to try to be disciples, right?
Yeah.
So I think the challenge this week is to try to reach out to somebody and say, start that conversation. I want us to sharpen each other in the Lord. I want us to walk this out. I'm going to give you permission to tell me the tough truths. I want to be able to tell you the tough truths. And really try to build that connection if you don't already have somebody like that in your life. And, and even ask God to provide those relationships in your prayer time, in your quiet time. Be like, God, I need somebody to help me find you. I need
Right.
somebody to help me bring close, like show me who you are, God, but also bring me somebody that will help sharpen me when I'm down and help bring me back up and tell me the things that I need to hear and not just coddle me.
Exactly. And I just, I thank you for being my, what do they call it? Just a sharpening stone.
Yeah.
You've helped me through many things, and I haven't even known you that long.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And sometimes in life you'll find the person that person knows their stuff, and that person, I could trust them, that they care enough about me where they're not going to lead me down a dark place.
Right. I agree with you, man. I appreciate your friendship. And you and I, like you said, we haven't known each other very long, but there is an opportunity there that I think even our listeners can grow from that it doesn't have to be somebody that you've known since they were in kindergarten, somebody that you grew up with your whole life. It definitely could be, and maybe it is in your life, but it doesn't have to be that. It definitely could be somebody in your men's group or somebody you ran into helping move a safe at church and started talking about NASCAR, and then it just kind of blossomed and took off from there. But I think this is a great conversation to have. I think we could even do a longer episode on something like this, for sure, about what that looks like practically, because I don't think you can really separate the idea of iron sharpening iron and discipleship. I think those things go hand in hand, because it's how we make disciples.
Ironing isn't as violent. You gotta get those wrinkles out. I mean, we could do one on that too if we want.
Oops. Sharpening ironing.
Yeah. So when you have that shirt with those bad wrinkles, you gotta put that.
Gotta put that elbow grease in it.
The OxyClean in there.
Man, it's been a long day. I don't know what to say, but iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
It's you can't separate those two things with this, with that in discipleship, and that's how we make disciples.
Yeah.
And we're all about that tough and true grit type of stuff here in Appalachia, and if we're going to be those types of disciples, man, we really need to understand what this means.
Heck yeah.
All right, buddy. Peace out.
All right.
Love you. Talk to you later,
Alrighty.
brother.
Somewhere along the line, we've lost the meaning of discipleship.